the word boundary variation. So this impedes the process that we call tokenization. A tokenizer is a piece of code that takes a string, a document string as input, and spits out a sequence of tokens. And these tokens are going to be our indexing units. Now, we already talked about why it's very important that your tokens be consistent between the queries and the documents. It's because they're used as indexing units, right? You're going to use them as keys into dictionaries, and if they don't match, you won't get a match. That's a big problem. So and will not match ands. So what's a token? Token is usually it's defined as any contiguous sequence of numbers or letters, so any contiguous alphanumeric sequence. That is pretty straightforward, and there is no other way to do that. The question really is, what do you do with all the other symbols that come between those strings? So, for example, IBM, PhD, 3.14, what should you do with those? They can be periods, they can be hyphens, they can be apostrophes, and really anything in between. So what's the right way to deal with those characters? And it turns out that, unfortunately, there isn't a simple answer. Whatever you do is going to cause problems. So, for example, if you take IBM, if you decide to split on periods, anytime you have a period, you're going to separate things into two tokens. You'll take strings like IBM and turn it into three independent tokens: the I, the B, and the M. Right? And they will start matching random stuff. So the I will match the pronoun I, right? So I was not part of IBM. That's not what it means. Now, if you choose to do the opposite, if you choose to fuse, if you choose to squeeze out the periods and concatenate the things, you're going to have another host of problems. So, for example, if you have a word like pre-diabetes and you choose to squeeze out a hyphen, you're going to end up with a token pre-diabetes as a single unit. And that's nice and interpretable, but there is a problem. When you do that, this pre-diabetes will no longer match the token diabetes. And that's something that you would want. If the query has diabetes and the document talks about pre-diabetes, they're relevant to each other. You want that match. And you won't get it if you squeeze out the hyphen. So anytime you do this, anytime you split, you will be increasing your false positives, your accidental matches, and anytime you fuse, you will be increasing your false negatives. You will miss the matches. You will miss the documents that you were supposed to retrieve. So how do you deal with that? When we talk about proximity indexing, there's a natural way to handle things like that. You can always split and store the parts of a word with positions, and then at query time assemble them into a proximity query. But for now, a simple and effective way to handle the problem is to do both. Right? So you don't choose between fusing sequences and splitting sequences, you do both. So you take IBM, and in one case you squeeze out the punctuation, and in another case you tokenize on the periods. Right? So you end up with a lot of tokens. You take IBM, and you end up with 4 different tokens. The I, the B, and the M that results from splitting on the period, and the IBM that results from squeezing out the punctuation and fusing all the tokens together. So now what's nice about this, if the query and the document use the same exact spelling, you're going to get 4 matches out of 4 because all of those things will match. If the query uses just I.B.M, well, actually, you will tokenize it in the same way, so you'll get all 4 matches. If the query uses just IBM, you'll get 1 match. Now, that's the same 1 match as you would get for pronoun I, but remember, the IDF for IBM is going to be a lot higher than the IDF for I. So the weighting is going to come at the last moment and save you from disastrous rankings. So now, doing it looks like you're introducing noise in the data. So it looks like you're taking something well-formed and you're just doing all sorts of things and throwing the results into one big bag. It's a misconception, and we'll see this many times in this course. you shouldn't be afraid to introduce noise in the data as long as you have appropriate weighting schemes and appropriate similarity functions that can take care of that noise. So doing that is actually a really pretty good idea. Now the critical thing here is you want to make sure that the same rules are applied to documents and to queries, because if you do tokenization for documents in one way and for queries in another way, nothing will match.